Here's a blindingly obvious insight. Revenue only comes from a customer. I mean, that's the only place I'm going to get revenue. And so for me, that leadership, if my leadership doesn't help a customer buy a product, it's not going to be useful. 50 to 70% of market value is intangibles. Does an investor have confidence in the future of a company? Two companies have the same earnings. They don't have the same stock price or the cost of capital, borrowing money. Why? Because investors have confidence in their future. Well, where's that confidence come from? Their quality of leadership.
Welcome to Science of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you become a better leader. Here, you'll gain valuable knowledge, hear inspiring stories, and learn the scientific principles that promote exceptional leadership. I'm Tom Collins, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this journey to becoming a better leader. Today, I'm honored to have Dr. David Ulrich on the podcast to discuss the Leadership Code, the essential framework for leadership effectiveness. Dr. Ulrich is the Rensis Lickert Collegiate Professor of Business Administration at the University of Michigan, co-founder of the RBL Group, and one of the world's leading authorities on leadership and human resource development. He's authored over 30 books, including The Leadership Code, which frames leadership in 5 key rules. This is an episode you will not want to miss. Dr. Ulrich, thanks for joining me on the Science of Leadership.
Dr. Collins, thank you. Can I call you Tom and you can call me Dave?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Happy to do so.
That makes it a little more comfortable. But okay. What a privilege to join you and to know your background and to get to know you, one of the most compassionate people around.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've been really looking forward to today's conversation. So, Dave, in the Leadership Code, you and your colleagues set out this framework, and you really were aiming to distill leadership into a set of core principles. Can you walk us through the Leadership Code and its 5 essential rules?
We Googled leader and we Googled leadership, and anyone can do it. And there's just, I don't even know how many today, but hundreds of millions of articles and ideas. What happens is it's so complex that we don't know what to do. So what my colleague Norm Smallwood and Kate Sweetman and I did, we went to 15 thought leaders. It's not a big sample, it's a small sample, but they had done 100 books and they had done over 1 million or 2 million 360. So they were really thought leaders in leadership. And we said to them 2 questions. Number 1, what % of leadership is basically the same stuff, no matter where you are, top of company, bottom, big company, small company, anywhere in the world? The answers were 60 to 80%. 70 to 80% of leadership is the same basic set of skills, no matter where you are. And then obviously question 2, what is it? What is it? And we took their ideas and trusted them and came up with 5 rules, 5 core things. Number 1, really simple, strategy. Do you know where you're going? Leaders have to figure out a direction, where you're going, vision, mission, purpose, whatever agenda you want. Number 2, execution. Do you get there? Do you make progress? Do you move forward? Do you know what's going to happen? Do you make change happen? Do you have accountability? Number 3, managing talent today. Do I engage my people? Do I help my people? Do I nurture my people? Number 4, building the future of my people and organization. Am I helping create the next generation of people? Am I investing in the future? And number 5, in the middle, do I have personal proficiency? Am I authentic? Am I credible? So north, south, east, west. North, where am I going? West, how do I get there? South, how do I treat people? West or east, whichever is left, how do I build the future? And then in the middle, at the heart, is personal proficiency. And then what we found, Tom, is really simple. Those 5 categories tend to be timeless. If you go back 10 years, 50 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, I still remember, and it shows how old I am, Peter Drucker in a workshop saying, the greatest leadership ever done was the pyramids. Kind of interesting. He said, we've not advanced much past then. Well, you take those 5 things. Strategy, they knew what they were doing. Execution, they got it done. Talent, they managed their people. Human capability, human capital development, they built future generations. That's what the pyramids were about. And personal, they had authenticity, credibility. So those 5 timeless, simple principles seem to be a base for leadership. We call it the code. Everybody says that's the DNA code. I'm now going to confess. When we wrote the book, the movie The Da Vinci Code was popular. So we took the idea from the Da Vinci Code, the movie, and I know there are movie buffs who would appreciate that metaphor. We took it from the Da Vinci Code, not the DNA code, but we'll claim that's the DNA code of leadership.
Well, that was a fortuitous set of circumstances that panned out that way, because I think you're right. I think people do think of it as DNA related. But thanks for walking through those with us, Dave. That's really valuable, really helpful to frame how we're going to be thinking about this and talking about it. I suspect those 5 things were not just randomly assigned in order with regard to how you laid it out in the book and how you described it just now, but rather you really carefully thought about that order. Is that correct? Is there a hierarchy, or do you see them as all equal?
You can almost begin anywhere. You can say, okay, we got good talent. What does that now mean for our strategy? Marriott Hotels has great talent. They know how to manage their people. So what's their strategy? They're going to get into retirement communities. So you can use your talent to drive strategy. or strategy and pick talent. So we have it as a 2x2. Everything in life is a 2x2. It's do I focus past or future? Do I focus on people or process? And in that 2x2, we can put those five domains.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, as I've thought about them, they seem to be less like a litany and more consistent with what I would call a cognitive network, in that they're interdependent, to a
Oh
significant
yeah.
extent.
Great comment. Great comment. So, I mean, we say we're going to have a strategy of X, Y, and Z, but the talent we've got does A, B, and C. And so we're going to end up in a misplaced agenda. And so they really do go together. What I like about them is, and again, we always like the things that we created. They're timeless. You can apply them almost any time, any place, but it's also timely. So what you need to do to be a strategist today is not the same as what you needed to do 15 years ago. In a world of AI, in a world of uncertainty, in a world of change, today's strategy is not about just articulating a vision, it's managing and dealing with uncertainty. And
Mm.
so you get behaviors that may be timely against a timeless set of principles.
Yeah, that's helpful. So I was wondering if you could maybe have just take a couple of these rules and maybe expand on them just a little bit. For instance, when you talk about leaders shaping the future, what does that look like for them?
A great comment. This is the strategist domain. So it says, if I'm going to lead, we have to know where we're going. And we can talk about that in lots of terms. We've got vision, mission, strategy, goals, objectives. I was in a company once and they had spent about 6 months with a consulting firm coming up with their statement. They had their values, their vision, their mission, their strategies, their goals. There were 36 items on this one-page sheet in small type. And just before I'd arrived, they sent it out to 30,000 employees overnight with a video and a workbook and a one-page sheet. And they asked me what I thought. And I asked a question. I said, what do you think those folks did when they got your overnight mail with the video and the sheet? You think they sat down and said, oh, thank you, corporate. We're going to memorize it. I call it SPOTS, strategic plan on top shelf. It's a strategic plan. They put it on the shelf. And once it goes to the shelf, it's been a bookcase funeral. It's like all the books we have on our shelves. They're now on the shelves. We won't read them again. By the way, I should confess, they asked me to finish my session that day at noon. They didn't want me back in the afternoon because I thought they'd not really done the key. You take all those terms, and they're great terms: vision, mission, strategy, goals, objectives, key result areas. What does it mean? You have an aspiration. What are you trying to accomplish? An aspiration focuses on the future. Given what we have capacity to do and where we envision next, what's our aspiration? How do we begin to see what that future might look like for me? And that applies at every level. For a CEO, where do I want to take my firm? For any business unit, where do I want to take my business? For a function, where do I want to take my function? I think we need aspirations that inspire, that capture the future. And I mentioned before, so I'll tie up on that one. The behaviors of creating that aspiration, and they say, is that a strategy, a mission, a vision, a key result? I don't care. I can, by the way, I've written papers that distinguish those, but it's an aspiration. What's unique in today's world? And what I think is unique and timely in today's world against the timeless strategist role is uncertainty. Go back 5 years. I was thinking about that this morning. We're February of 2025. In the last 5 years, what's happened? March 2020, COVID. Oh my gosh, our world just changed. It shut down. Since then, we've had, I don't even need to go through it, political
Right.
uncertainty, economic uncertainty. In this world of incredible uncertainty, and we face it today, as people look at this podcast maybe in a year or two, we don't even know what's going to happen. So, what's the leadership aspiration skill? And my answer is find certainty in uncertainty. Instead of chasing the uncertainty, let's do scenario planning, scenario planning. You can't even predict the scenario.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted COVID? Who could have predicted some of the wars that we've had and some of the trauma of the election? Who could have predicted those things? Let me explain what I mean by certainty and uncertainty. When
Yeah.
COVID happened, I traveled a lot. I know you've done your work. We do a lot. We travel. We're engaged. I was a frequent flyer on a lot of airlines. COVID hit. I'm not traveling. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do alternative. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it hit me. Slow down. What are you certain about? What is your aspiration, your core value, your strategy, your mission, your vision? And it hit me. I love to learn. I love to learn. That's my passion. And I love to learn in ways that help others get better. And so I thought, that's a certainty in my life. So now, where can I do that? I had never done video podcast. Somebody said you have a face for a radio.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to step in. I'm going to try to learn. I'm going to try to find new ways to meet my certainty. So, a business leader, what are we certain about? What are we certain about in our aspiration? And then in a world of uncertainty, stick with that certainty. So, that's an example of strategist, where are we going, aspiration, and then the certainty in the behavior that goes with that. So, I'm going to
Is
ask you, Tom, you don't get asked
sure.
many questions. I love your background. You've moved from medicine into leadership and you're playing in multiple worlds. What are you certain about? Given all the complexity in your world, what is it, your aspiration? And I'll talk just 10 seconds while you think. What are you certain about? What is it I, Tom, want to be known for?
That's a fundamental question, and it's something that I actually have I have arrived at, and that I work with those people that I mentor and coach to help them work through that, because ultimately it's about purpose. What is your big purpose? And you, I resonated with you to some degree when you talked about what you're certain about, but I've arrived at the reason that I'm here on this earth is to help other people do great things. It's to help them recognize their potential and achieve things. And whether I get some notoriety out of that or not is not what matters. It's
I love
about
it.
that. It's building other people so they do great things. And that's the purpose of this podcast. That's the purpose behind my book. All the things that I'm doing are geared ultimately toward that.
We're going to do an aside on the code. I love that because leadership is not about what you do. It's how about what you do helps others be better.
Yeah.
One of my, and I love that idea. I was coaching a woman who is one of the most incredible people, and you've coached great people and worked with great people, but incredible. Top student, multiple degrees, 6 languages. We met these iconic people, and we just go, yes. And she became the president of a university, and everybody wanted her to tell her story, which was so amazing. And as we went out and talked to people, I said to her, your job is not to tell your story. It's to help the 40,000 students create theirs.
Mm.
Leadership is not what you know and do, but how what you know and do helps others know and do what they need to do better. And I love it. You want to help people do great things, fulfill their potential. I really resonate with that. I call it aspiration, you call it purpose. That's the same kind of agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share that, because that is the thing behind, the driver behind these things. And I think, unfortunately, it's my observation that a lot of people in society never take the time to go through that exercise of figuring out what is their real aspiration, as you say, or purpose, as I would say. What are you really about? Like, if there's one thing that when it's all said and done, you can look back on and say, that was worth my time here, what would that thing be? And I think just so many people don't do that. Maybe they're caught up in the mill, don't take those moments. So I think as leaders, we absolutely need to be thinking about that, and we have to help our people think about that.
And the answers will be different. You and I overlap
Right.
some. We're going to have differences as well. And people may be in very different places. When I've coached people, and I'd love to get your experience, some people talk about leaders being dogmatic, autocratic. I don't find many leaders saying, my goal in life is to exercise power and destroy others. No, I see most leaders having good intent. Now, their behavior may not reflect their intention. And I think that's a fair comment. But I see most leaders having pretty good intent about trying to do things that will help something prosper. Leadership is about growth. It's about getting better in the future. It's about purpose or aspiration. Thank you for sharing. That was very helpful.
Well, again, thanks for the opportunity, because when I'm on this side of the mic, I usually do try to get the guests to talk, because probably people have heard me talk a lot, but I appreciate that. I think it's a lot more fun and engaging and valuable in that regard. So I agree with you that most leaders, and we'd have to figure out what the percentage most equals, but I would say at least 80% of the people that I know who are giving it their best shot to be leaders are doing it out of a place that is positive and altruistic to some degree. There are certainly those that we could identify who aren't, but most people are engaged in that, and that's why we do what we do, I think.
One of the let me pick up on this theme because I hope if I'm listening, you're saying, well, what does this mean for me? And I love simplicity. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have a medical degree, but I have a PhD in taxonomy, which is the science of simplicity. And so people say, what's the simplest test of your leadership? And here's the simple test based on what we just said. How often does someone leave an interaction with you feeling better or worse about themselves? And they say, well, what's the statistic? And I don't want statistic. Just think about leaders who've impacted you, mentors, leaders, students who've been leaders if we are teaching at universities. Think about those who've led you. What's common? I leave an interaction feeling better.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I ask leaders, are you doing things so that when people leave an interaction, they feel better? Now, sometimes that's easy. Everybody succeeded. We've met our goals. We're successful. We all get bonuses. We all get to go to band for vacation. It's kind of cool. We get to take off. But what about when it's bad news? Can you also do as a leader to try to help others feel better about themselves? Quick anecdote. Coaching an incredible leader, and we all get to coach and we learn from the experiences. And very tough company. And an employee had made an egregious mistake, costing the company a lot of money. This company was global. The leader had a tendency to write an email. And I agreed with this leader who was trying to improve his behavior to get his intention was good, but his behavior wasn't always to send me the stuff before he sent it out. But here was the email. You made a huge mistake. It's going to cost us millions. If you don't fix it, you'll be fired. And I wrote back really quickly, don't send yet. Don't send yet. And I wrote back and I said, try this. I care about you. You have great potential at this company. You made a mistake. It's going to cost us a lot of money. What can we learn from it? By the way, the message is the same. Leaders can't avoid. You made a mistake. It's going to cost us money. Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. That's part of leadership. But you've got to make people feel better about themselves, even in delivering unfavorable news. He called me back a day or two later and he said, I can't believe it. That employee called me back and said, thank you. He said, I don't get that very often. I care about you. You have great potential. You made a mistake. What are we going to learn? Not threaten, but what are we going to learn so that we can improve? And I think to me, does the leader help others feel better about themselves? In good news, that's easy. But even in tough times, that becomes so important.
Yeah. Maybe I need a PhD in taxonomy after I finish the PhD program I'm doing now, but because
Let me encourage you not to do that. I'm going to show you something fun. Why? I have in my office, I don't know when you get your PhD. This is from University Microfilms. It's a
okay.
check that my PhD sold, and I got $11.85. So I kept that for the last 35 years in my show to remind me to be humble. I spent a year doing taxonomy, and I made $11.85. I think
Man,
that's kind of fun.
that's a low return per hour.
It's not even a return. Anyway,
Yeah. So because I too am very much about how do we take complex concepts and simplify them so that people understand them and can put them in their pocket and use them, right? So it's not this really difficult stuff, but it's easy and so forth. And what you were saying just now, and I've said this before on this podcast, but I have a son, he's 17 now, and he and I were just talking some time ago, maybe a year, maybe a little more, and he was asking about how to make friends and you know and do better in the social scene of high school. And I said, son, the key is make other people feel good about themselves in your presence. If you do that, you will not be able to stop having friends. And that's leadership. That's what you're getting at.
cool. I love working with teenagers. Do you love working with kids, teenagers? I just think because they're so honest and they're so fun. We used to coach our kids when they were younger, teenagers. If you go on a date and you like the person, ask a lot of questions. Get them
Yeah.
talking and learn. If you don't like the person, talk a lot about yourself. And
Yeah.
uh, and again, same true in leadership. Again, these simple principles have application in many places.
Yeah. It's a little one of I have a at the end of my CV, I keep a running list of the leadership related books that I've read. And so it's getting pretty lengthy at this point, but I have them in rank order. And right it's in the top 3 is Dale Carnegie's, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it is exactly what you're saying. Get people to talk about themselves. They'll think you're a great conversationalist.
We have the same book on the top of our list. I try to be successful, so I worry. His book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living,
Yeah.
is so good. And he has a tip in there. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I'm nervous on this podcast. Again, I get nervous. What's the worst thing that can happen? You'll make a fool of yourself. No, I've done that before. That's not, I can live with
Already
that.
done it. Yeah.
I've done that and lived. I mean, Dale Carnegie I wish I could have met him. He wrote
Yeah.
many, many phenomenal books that were so helpful.
Yeah. Well, speaking about books and developing ourselves and so forth, what about investing in yourself? What are the ways that, you've seen great leaders really invest in themselves to be better?
Let me get us back on I think we are on target. This is a conversation, not a
Yeah.
script.
Right.
Let
Yeah.
me go through the 4 north, south, east, west.
Right.
Strategy, where am I going?
Hmm.
Execution, what do I have to do to get there? Talent management, how do I care for my people? How do I make them better? Human capital development, how do I invest in the future? So there's legacy. But in the middle is personal proficiency.
Yeah.
How do you invest in yourself so that you can care for others? How do you take care of yourself so that you can care for others? A couple of quick tips. And it's, again, you have them. We all have tips. 1, what do I want? We talked about that with certainty. How do I define success? And that may vary over time, but I love that question. What do I want? What do I want to be known for? What's my personal brand? Second, what do I have to do to begin to make that happen? What are the behaviors? What are the actions? Third, how do I take care of myself? I'm going to ask you, I'll share mine. I think sometimes leaders have enormous stress. And in the world we live in today, it's very stressful. The
Hmm.
information, all the noise, all the ambiguity, all the uncertainty. What do we do to take a little bit of a time out? What do we do to care for ourselves? And there's some common answers. We exercise, uh, all over the map. I have some really weird answers. Uh, in the 90s, when it was stressful and we had kids at home and we were growing and nurturing, I'd watch Seinfeld. I know that's a plug for Seinfeld, and I have no clue why, but I could watch 2 episodes of Seinfeld and I just relaxed. My wife, who's a very good psychologist, said, "What's going on?" And then she watched Seinfeld and said, "Wow, you're George." So most of us have seen Seinfeld. Again,
Yeah.
that's really stupid, but everybody seems to need to say, "This is what I do that allows me to feel I love your agenda, your purpose, help others do great things. What do I need to do to invest in myself so that I can then help others?" And I see people all over the map. I was at a church meeting on Sunday, and the person speaking just said, "I'm not going to give a talk. I'm going to play the piano." And instead of a sermon, he played the piano, and there was a sweet spirit. And I could tell for him that was his renewal. And I hope all of us find a place that, and whatever it is, I don't know what yours is. I'm being inquisitive a little bit, but when you're feeling that stress, what works for you?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share that. I think that exercise definitely is one of the things that I go to a lot. I adulterate some of my exercise a lot of times because I have a stationary bike and I spend a lot of time on it. And every time that I'm on it, I'm reading a leadership book usually because I'm seeking to master this domain. But the thing that cries out, there are two things that cry out to me that I really need to do. One is to be on my bike, not stationary bike, but on my bike out just hammering for long periods of time, just me and the wind. It's like flying, like the dreams I had when I was a kid. That's what riding my bike is like. And in those times, things become much clearer. The second thing for me is trail running. And so before we moved here, we lived in Menlo Park, California, and I was able to trail run in these places that I didn't realize existed. Okay, like they were in a song somewhere about redwoods and all that sort of business, but I got to that became my sanctuary,
So
and
cool.
so I would spend hours and hours just running through the Santa Cruz Mountains in these trees that I'd only seen in books and things, and in those moments, God would speak to me in real ways, and so that those are two things. I do prayer time and scripture reading. Some people call it meditation or what have you, and that's to each their own. But those are the things that really valuable for me.
I'm going to circle that to each their own. What works for you? Boy, do I relate to you so quickly. Biking. Our daughter had a pretty nasty experience with relationship. Dad, what are we going to do? Let's go bike. Let's go from Eugene, Florence, Oregon to San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah,
Now you would do that in a day. It took us a long time on those mountains. And we discovered, by the way, biking on the coast sounds cool because it's all downhill. That's not true at all.
no,
Because every 5 miles there's a tributary, and you go up and down, and
right.
you have to turn left when you hit the bottom of the mountain, and then go 100 feet, and then go across the bridge, so you don't get any momentum. But you'd appreciate that on bikes.
Yeah,
That was just such an incredible experience for her and I to just spend
yeah,
6 or 7 days. And one of the highlights I'll remember is biking through the redwoods. It was
yeah.
almost like a spiritual temple experience. Those gorgeous trees and the serenity. So now I think the message is not what do Tave and Tom do. That's not relevant at all. The
Sure.
message is what do I do, and what can I do, and then to legitimately say, block it out on your calendar. Block it out. Find a way to do. If it's Seinfeld, if it's exercise, if it's biking, if it's religion, if it's prayer, find a time to make that legitimate. And I've had a lot of people say different things. It's shopping, it's friendly, it's being friends, it's whatever it is, as long as it's not dysfunctional.
Right.
uh, but I hope leaders do that. So that's in the middle of those 5 domains. Is are you taking care of yourself, and then are you helping those you lead take care of themselves? Are you helping other people find their journey to that peaceful place so that they have the energy that's necessary to lead?
Yeah. Makes me wonder as you're laying that out, taking care of yourself and taking care of others. I wonder if, I've done research in burnout in physicians, but some of the burnout and professional disengagement, lack of fulfillment, all those things that we see could be traced to that. I think there's some work out there that suggests that, and I don't know that people necessarily take it seriously, or maybe they're unaware of it. Leaders, that is, are unaware of it, but that it is making sure that you're in a good place that trickles over directly to the people that you're trying to lead.
I mean, people do what leaders do. I took some time off to run a mission for a church for a few years, and I wore a coat and a tie. That was part of the liturgy or whatever. One month, I buttoned my coat every day, and at the end of the month, everybody buttoned their coat. The next month, I left my coat unbuttoned every day, and everybody unbuttoned their coat. Then I did a day on and a day off, and people would come to me and say, "President, should I button my coat or unbutton my coat?" And I said, "I'm trying to teach you to not look at your leader for stupid stuff. Buttoning your coat is a stupid thing. Look to your leader." But I also recognize leadership is not what we say, it's what we do. I mean, leadership
Yeah.
hypocrisy is so rampant with children.
Hmm.
I don't know, your 17-year-old son, we had 3 children. Clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, 7, 8, 9, 10. At age 10 or 11, they'd look at us and say, Dad, your room's a mess. And you lead by modeling
Yeah.
and then helping others lead. I love your biking example. I don't know if you ever biked. I love to bike. I used to go when I was in better shape with young men biking. And I said, where can I lead these 8 or 10 kids in biking? And I say, I'm going to lead from the front. So I take off, and you're going to show how bad I am at biking. I'd start at 12 miles an hour. I'd get up to 15, and that's not very fast. And I'd look behind me, and they were a quarter mile behind me.
All right.
And I thought, that doesn't work. What I learned was leadership says to one of the young men to say, um, Joe, you're going to take off. It's your hour. He starts at 10 or 11 miles an hour. I'm right behind him. My front wheel is on his back wheel. And I keep saying, Joe, you are doing so well. Thank you. You're the leader. You're good. You're good. You're good. And I go 12, 13, 14. Within 10 minutes, I can get every kid up to 15 from leading from behind.
Yeah.
Not way behind. If I'm at the back, nobody pays attention, but just to the side behind. Joe, you're doing great. Keep it up. And I go slowly. And I think sometimes leaders want to be out front. I have to be the visible power person. No, I think sometimes leaders lead from the side. And the job of a leader is to empower others, to
Mhm.
use your power, your authority to make others better. And again, I run, sounds like you love to run experiments. I love to run little experiments. So that was my experiment. And I think that's the kind of agenda that those of us who work with leaders are saying, don't just listen to me. Let me listen to you. How can I help you? How can I build you as a better leader? And anyway, that's that personal authenticity that we lead by helping others lead better. I love the metaphor of empowerment. We use our power to
Yeah.
empower others.
Yeah. As you're talking, and we're kind of talking about cycling and things, I'm starting to think about a book in the future that we should put together, because there's so many lessons that we could learn from the saddle of a bicycle seat when it comes to leadership. I was just thinking about, so I've done centuries, so 100-mile bike rides, for those listeners that aren't cyclists, and a lot of times you'll find middle-aged men who probably were great athletes at some point in their past, and they're still trying to hang on to that. And so people will cluster in these groups. My wife refers to them as Peloton. It's not exactly, but anyway, we'll call it that for the sake of listeners. And what you find is you're in the slipstream of the person, as Dave is describing, in front of you, and there's somebody up at the front who's really cutting the wind, and that decreases the output that you have to have by half. And so what happens is the person who is what's called pulling up front, breaking all the wind and making it easier for everyone else, has a period of time that they're leading. And depending on how fast you're going, that isn't necessarily that long. And there's a phenomenon that happens. You could lock in at let's say we're moving along at 22 miles an hour or something, and everybody's pulling right along at that, right? And the guy up front is like, okay, it's my time to get off the front, moves out to the left, and then starts funneling back to the rear of the group. Invariably, the person who's in second, who now is in the lead, will accelerate and destroy things unless they've ridden in a group significantly. They rush out, and so instead of being at 22, they'll bump up to like 24, right? And so the person who's coming off the front, who's been pulling for a while, is beat, can't get to the back and latch on, gets dropped, and then you see that repeated until the whole thing falls apart. So anyway, I was just thinking about that
Oh, I
as you were
love it.
talking.
By the way,
Yeah,
notice the difference between Tom and me. I started at 12. He started at 22. So that's a big difference. But the principle, that is so cool. I hadn't thought about that, because as soon as the person in front moves off, the next person, I'm going to go to 24, and he should stay at 22, because
right.
that's where the group is getting their leverage.
Yeah,
What a great example. What a great
yeah,
example. Thanks for sharing.
yeah. Well, we've kind of hit on. I mean, we've gone through, the leadership code, and why those are important and so forth. I was wondering, from a scientific standpoint, what comes to mind with why these are so, valuable to you, not to you, but to all of us. Can you hit on that?
Name a company you admire. Just name a company you admire.
HP.
Hewlett Packard?
Yes.
Got it. Why?
Um,
And I hope everybody listening is doing the same. I'm not doing this just to fill time. I'm going to make a point.
sure. Yeah. I think fundamentally I'm familiar with the HP way, and that there is that value set, and I agree with it. And I think that it's historically created a culture that's very successful in a number of ways, not just from a financial standpoint.
Let me tell you why I start there. We often start talking about leadership from an inside out. Who am I? What am I? What am I trying to do? When we work with leadership, we often, another book that may be on the bottom of your list. Let me see if I can work my way up the Peloton. It's called Leadership Brand. Define effective leadership not by what we know, but by what our customers need to know. So I think of HP, and you say, I'm going to buy an HP product because I trust their values. They're reliable, they're innovative, they're good. And you begin to lay out, what are those values that matter to me as a customer to buy their product. Walmart's going to be different. Walmart is efficient, they're low cost. I'm buying because of the products and services. Our view of leadership is when internal leaders have the behaviors that reflect external customer promises. Let me say that again. When internal leadership actions reflect external promises, the brand outside, then that leader is going to be more effective. So we love to say to leaders, who are you trying to serve? What is it they need from you? And do your internal leadership actions reflect those external promises? We call that the leadership brand. It says, for example, if I were at HP and they value customers who buy from HP value innovation, they value service. If I were looking at the HP leadership model that comes from the HP way, is that what their model shows? If I look at their training program, are they training against external items? We've actually argued ad agencies to put together ads for Nike, for Walmart, for Google, for Unilever, for any firm in the world. Those ad agencies should be connected to leadership development because they should be saying, we're going to spend $10 million, euros, whatever, on an ad campaign to say to the marketplace, this is what we want to be known for in the market. They had to spend 500,000, 5 to 10% on internal leadership development so that their leaders behave against those promises. We've made that case. It hasn't worked for most of them, but I get frustrated when the internal leadership people don't connect the knowledge and skills in those 5 domains against the external customer promises, because that's where the sustainability and effectiveness ultimately comes from in a company.
Yeah, it's am I hearing you right? It's integrity.
That's critical. That's critical. I mean, and the integrity means we live what we promise. I love to go to executives and I say, I'm going to talk about leadership or culture. You probably had this. And at first their eyes glaze over. Oh, here it is again. Some social goody. And I say, go to your customers, ask them 3 questions. Let's take the HP way. Number 1, are these the values you want us to have? Service, innovation, integrity. Generally, they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no. I was in one company, their number 1 value was to be the most profitable firm in their industry. Take that to a customer. They're going to go,
Right.
no, that doesn't work for me because you're going to overcharge. But yes, I agree with the values. Number 2, you, the customer, tell us what we need to do to live them better. What does service mean to you? What does innovation mean to you? What does integrity mean to you? What does collaboration mean to you? So the outside customer defines the behavior. Number 1, are these values meaningful to you? 2, how do we demonstrate them to you? And number 3, when we do that, will you buy more from us? And about that point, the executives say, hold it. You mean these values are meant to increase customer revenue? Of course. If your values don't create value for the customer, then they're the wrong values. And suddenly executives go, wow, you mean this culture is not some ethereal academic balderall? No. Will you buy more from us if we do these things that you say make us innovative? And if the answer is no, go back and start again. Because that's the spiral, not a cycle, that moves us forward. To me, that's the leadership brand. And then we're going to train leaders, we're going to develop leaders, we're going to hire leaders, we're going to pay leaders against the values that the customer finds valuable. I'm moving. The code is the basics. That's 60 to
Hmm.
70%,
Yeah.
75%. This is the differentiators. This is the stuff that we want to get, that we're known for. And good companies do that. They do that intuitively with people like you and perhaps people like me. We can begin to put those intuitive actions into a script that people can then learn from.
Yeah. I think you're right that on so many accounts, but right in this moment, in that, wow, a lot of companies, there is a disconnect between what they value and what the people they're trying to, this will sound, capitalize in a sense on value, right? And how do we correct that? Because right now in our society, since, and I'm blanking on the chap's name from the 70s, and I think it was late 60s, 70s, who said shareholder return is the answer, right? There's so much focus on that the people that theoretically you're serving with your products or services aren't even a part of the equation a lot of times.
And that would be tragic. I mean, I think you change one letter in that shareholder return and make it stakeholder. The shareholder matters, no question. I mean, if we don't make money and survive economically, we're in trouble. But if all you do is serve the shareholders, you're going to make some really stupid decisions. I mean, you won't invest in development, you won't invest in R&D, you won't invest in the future. That's just silly. But stakeholder, how do I serve a shareholder? No question. How do I also serve a customer, a community? How do I serve an employee? How do I serve an executive? How do I serve the mix of stakeholders becomes an interesting paradox. Now, leadership, if it was easy, we wouldn't need 500 million books. Navigating that inherent tension and paradox becomes critical. Some firms overinvest in shareholder. That's going to create a problem. 'Cause, and they don't exist much anymore because this is the private equity of the 90s. You buy a firm, you sell off all the assets, and it's gone. I mean, and that was a shareholder value, but it didn't create a successful firm. You got to manage stakeholders. You got to manage your customers. You got to manage your communities. You got to build that reputation. And the good firms do that. HP is a great example. HP is a great example. Started in 1958 in a garage with Hewlett and Packard. Has continued to reinvent itself. It's spun off Agilent. It's spun off other firms. But that HP way becomes a timeless value set that allows it to continue to adapt to the marketplace that it's in. And I think firms like HP have done that really, really nicely. And again, in the process, they've made money. I'm not going to say this is all irrelevant, because if you don't make money, you're not going to continue to exist. So, do you ever get an idea and you go, "How can I be so stupid that I didn't see it before?" I get that
Yeah.
periodically. The one that hit me this year, we love to look at financials, return on investment, revenue minus cost, profitability. Here's an insight. That's always a lag indicator. We never report next year's
Right.
financials. We report last month, last year.
Right.
And so what we want to do, if we're going to be good leaders, we want to be ahead of the lag indicator. So what is it that drives revenue? What is it that manages costs? How do I get ahead of that? Here's a blindingly obvious insight. Revenue only comes from a customer. I mean, that's the only
Yeah.
place I'm going to get revenue. And so for me, that leadership, if my leadership doesn't help a customer buy a product, it's not going to be useful. And so rather than get obsessed about, how can I predict last year's financial results? I don't want to predict last year's. I want to create next year's by getting ahead of the game we call it outside in, looking at
Mhm.
customers, looking at investors. One of the fascinating things with investors today, those who are smart, the correlation between earnings and stock price, often criteria, is really low. That about 70, well, it's all over the map, but 50 to 70% of market value is intangibles. Does an investor have confidence in the future of a company? Two companies have the same earnings. They don't have the same stock price or the cost of
Right.
capital, borrowing money. Why? Because investors have confidence in their future. Well, where's that confidence come from? Your quality of leadership. So if I can show an investor that our quality of leadership is better than our competitors, I'm then going to predict the lag indicator of business results. Don't obsess about business results. Obsess about that lead indicator. Okay, I've just thrown a whole bunch of stupid stuff in there. We've got a long time. What I hope people listening to this are getting, leadership is an art, not a science. There is science, there is research. You've
Mhm.
done research, I do research, but it's an exciting space to
Yeah.
really differentiate yourself, not just around the code, but around the brand and who you are and what you do to help others get better. I love where you were. Your purpose is to help others do, I wrote it down, to help others do great things.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing those comments on difference between shareholder, stakeholder, and how does one as a leader make their company lasting and achieve more than just returning a quarterly increase in the stock value and things. I agree with you. Leadership, because as you say in the leadership code, it's about how are you developing the future? How are you bringing the future into existence in a sense? As a leader, you're supposed to be seeing the future and working toward that. And the future is not 3 months from now or 6 months from now. And as you say, it's not predicting what happened 6 months ago, right? And so changing that mindset to one that has more legacy, I think, is so important. And that gets, as we're kind of wrapping up here near the end, these concepts of leadership. All the things that make great leaders are the same things, I think, that make for a great life. So it's not just how do you get people to buy your product or take over the market or win some championship or whatever it may be, but it's those fundamental things of knowing how to operate within humanity in a way that helps everybody succeed. And if you can do that, what a great life you can have.
Boy, do I so agree with that. And leadership is about helping others discover their lives. My wife and I did a book together called Why of Work. And one of the things we discovered is we had a friend, and lovely friend, we adored her. We said to her, "What would be your ideal job?" And she said, "I would love to be a toll booth operator." Now,
That's a
by the way,
shocking.
look at your face, look at my face. That is the antithesis of those who have a book of the books they read in leadership, starting at 22 miles an hour, driven type A. And I said, "Tell me about that." She said, "What did you do last night?" Well, I worked till about 10 on what I'm going to talk about on the podcast. "What did you do at 3 in the morning?" I woke up nervous. And she said, "I went to bed. I had dinner with my daughter. I slept well. My meaning in life is not my job." And it hit me, more power to her. I could not be a toll booth operator. I would fail at that job. But I hope I'm willing to accept that we each find the things that work for us. And
Yeah,
leadership is about helping people discover that. And
yeah,
I feel that. I mean, I hope that what I do, I don't want my kids to do it. You hope your 17 doesn't grow up to be exactly like you, but to be like
yeah,
what he can become. And I agree that we need to help people find that meaning. And my meaning is not their meaning. I mean, I'm driven. I write books. I do stuff. I travel. That's my problem. My kids said, "Dad, that's your pathology. Keep making money. When you die, we'll be happier." And they joke about that. But but that's not theirs. And I think that's leadership. These principles really help us live a better life.
yeah. Dave, it's hard to end off on a more inspiring and poignant note than that. Thank you for being on the Science of Leadership, for talking through the leadership code with us, and for a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. The best is yet ahead.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Science of Leadership. We hope today's discussion has inspired you and given you valuable insights to help you become a better leader. Remember, leadership is about helping those we lead do great things. It's a journey of continual growth and learning. When we embrace that journey with curiosity, courage, and humility, we can confront challenges, overcome barriers, and foster environments where everyone can succeed. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with others who are passionate about leadership. Until next week, keep leading with character, competence, caring, and communication. This is Tom Collins. Let's keep growing.